Hey everybody, this is Kaous Games. Today what I want to talk about is my impressions on the DmC reboot. Now, I made a video earlier talking about their 2 million sales projection. This is going to be uh, more of my impressions via review. I played the game through and I got a thorough idea of what makes this game tick. I kind of just want to offer my humble opinion on it. Now, there were a lot of people who are accusing this game of being a bad game, in essence. Now, the thing I want to say about this game is that, in my opinion, overall, Ninja Theory did a pretty good job at making a good game, a different game, mind you, but still a good game. And the difference you find is more in the Eastern Japan style of storytelling, which you'll find mostly in the original, and more of the Western style of storytelling. Now, both, in my opinion, are good, but they're just different. Now, I compare this. If anybody's out there who's ever read a comic book or is familiar with the comic books and how they work, it's like oftentimes you'll have the main series, and then sometimes they'll bring in a reboot series. For example, X-Men and Ultimate X-Men. And usually what happens is they have this pretty much the same base premise. X-Men are still X-Men, but they take liberties here and there. Like, for example, in Ultimate X-Men, Storm is a vampire. And at one point, she turns Gambit into a vampire. It's little things like that that kind of put an interesting twist on, the main series. So that's why I'm going to call this game Ultimate DmC, because that's what it is. It's an alternate universe. Uh, Obviously, you have to come down to what do you prefer, the original or the alternate. I generally prefer the alternate or the original. This is no exception, but that does not mean that the alternate is bad. Now, speaking on from what it is, as a different storyline, a branch off storyline, a different universe. Let's see the good things that Ninja Theory did here. They brought a cohesion to the story that the old Devil May Cry really didn't have because of the method of storytelling. There's not a situation in this game where you don't understand what you're supposed to do, what the objective is, why you're doing what you're doing, and how you're going to go about doing it. Whereas the old DMCs, oftentimes in most of those stories, it was this is the general premise, this is our overall mission, get it done, Dante. That's it, and you just go from there mostly. So I like the organization and the engaging story drivenness of this DMC, or the Ultimate DMC. So Ninja Theory did a good job with the writing. Now, except for when it came to Dante in a couple instances. There's some people out there taking it overboard, I feel, saying that Dante, or this new Dante, is a unbearable character. He's cringingly bad. I'd say I don't agree with that. From my take on him is that there's a couple instances where you could tell where the writers were trying too hard to be witty, and they threw in some one-liners that really just were facepalm worthy. And obviously the infamous "fuck you, fuck you, fuck you" scene, that was a facepalm. No one's denying that. And there's more of that. Good news is, at least from my finding, is that they are not as few. They're few and far in between. They don't happen that often, and you can pretty much write them off. And sometimes, in them trying to be witty and snarky, they actually, create a little bit of a humorous scene. Doesn't happen often either, but it does happen at some points in the game. They get a little chuckle. But what I would like to focus on, though, is the gameplay. The gameplay, even though it does fall short, in my opinion, of the chaotic nature of Devil May Cry 3 and 4, they still make it feel like a Devil May Cry game. It plays like a Devil May Cry game. I would have preferred to have access to my Royal Guard, my Trickster, and my Gunslinger styles. They kind of abandoned those really good concepts in this game, but still, they kept a lot of what made Devil May Cry exciting to play. Like, for example, they kept the overdrive move. I used to love to use that. They kept one of my other staples is the stinger into the Trilla stab, or the Milla stab, what they called it in the original series. So they kept a lot of those things. There's the up driver, the down driver. There's the juggling in there. I mean, they kept a lot of those things. They added some styles in, which they didn't do so much of. Let's say they had some styles. So I really compare it mostly. If I want to go on gameplay, I compare this gameplay mostly to Devil May Cry 1's gameplay, which was really fucking good too. So this is still really good gameplay. I mean, there's no denying that. It's just, like I said, it falls short of the over-the-topness of Devil May Cry 3 and 4. It's not that big a deal, but it still is good. Now, what I will say next is that this reinvention of Virgil, I can't say I like that too much. I know it's a different universe, but still, the Virgil in Devil May Cry 3, he was ice cold. He was menacing. He, whenever Dante met up with him, he knew some shit was about to go down, and Dante was in some serious trouble. That whole premise made that Devil May Cry 3 one of my favorites. Probably second only to the original Devil May Cry. And, it's just when you meet Virgil that first time with Dante, Dante's in trouble. He's probably not going to win this fight because Virgil's on point. He's focused. He's mean and unforgiving. And sure enough, Dante loses that first fight. But they meet that second time. Dante fights into a stalemate. And you're like, oh shit. Dante might stand a chance here. And in that third final struggle, you see Dante just edge him out. Just edge him out barely, and he proves he's the stronger. That was one of my favorite moments in gaming. That whole premise is the brothers going at, they're fighting for dominance. They're the dominance, not just a physical dominance, but the dominance of their ideas. That Dante trying to believing that humanity is worth protecting and allowing to flourish on its own, while Virgil just believes that humans are ants meant to be ruled. It's two opposing viewpoints, polar opposites, and they're clashing the whole game. And eventually, one starts off weaker, and then it gradually rises to overpower the other one. That was a great premise, but the story-drivenness was not as organized still as this new DmC. But still, I liked it better. But this new Virgil, even though they're allies, there's some foreboding though that Virgil has some ulterior motives. I'm not going to get into what those are. If you really are curious to know, you'll watch one of the several gameplay footage of this game if you don't want to buy this game. But there's points in the game that you'll see Virgil like, oh, that's pretty fucked up. He kind of cold, but he hides it. Unlike Virgil of Devil May Cry 3, who's just in your face, cold, menacing. He's not hiding it from you. He's not backing down. He's just, this is my idea. Get with it. Get out of my way. This Virgil's more of a snake. He's more of cerebral. He hides it behind a positive idealism. He's charismatic. He draws people to him in massive numbers based on his charisma, and he rallies people to his cause based on that charisma. But he has his ulterior motives, and you can tell that he's up to something. And of course he is. Foreboding achieved, right? But it comes down to, you ultimately feel that if Dante and him ever came to blows, Dante would mush his shit in. And he's just not an intimidating antagonist if that's what they were trying to build him up as. Unlike Virgil in Devil May Cry 3, who was obviously a very intimidating protagonist or antagonist, right? So I mean, like I said, I realized it's a different universe, but still, this Virgil, I kind of disappointed that the way they took him. But I'm still interested to see what they do with this downfall of Virgil DLC in February. I honestly thought originally it was coming out with the game, but to my dismay, it was not. It did not. It's not available until February. Maybe he does become, something happens to him to where he does become more formidable. And we know that Virgil was already formidable, and he became more so in Devil May Cry 1 when he got corrupted and turned into Nello Angelo. Maybe something like that happens to him in this downfall of Virgil. Maybe there's the name itself forebodes an act like that. So, my final verdict about the reboot, or the ultimate Devil May Cry, I should say, is it's a pretty good game. That's about it. It's a good game. Now, I will say their next step should be to find Hideki Kamiya at Platinum Games and beg him to come back and go back to the regular series of Devil May Cry 5. Yes, I said it. Ninja Theory did a good job. Now get out. I don't really care that, how well they did here. The original Dante and that whole premise was some of my favorite characters in gaming history. So I kind of want them to go back to it. And you're probably like, oh, well, if it was a good game, why would you want that? Well, I feel like they did this under faulty logic. The faulty logic being that they were trying to follow suit of other Japanese companies like Square Enix and cater to Westerners. Now, that's your faulty logic right there. If you're going to cater to Westerners, you have to realize a couple things. Most Westerners only play a very few type of games. And if it doesn't have Call of Duty on it, if it doesn't have Madden on it, if it doesn't have NBA 2K on it, most Westerners aren't going to be really interested in it. So, now you're a big mistake of thinking you could penetrate that market with a hack and slash game in the first place by just making the story cater to more Western literary styles. It don't work like that. And that's obviously what they were trying to do by setting with their original sales objection, like, oh, we're gonna boost our sales copies of this game to 5 million copies. Their marketing team needs to be re-examined. And the guy who told that the director of this project, that it was a good idea, needs to be reevaluated. Because what did they assume, that if in this attempt to go after their Western market, that they weren't gonna alienate their Japanese market? What they think? They were gonna just fall in line and get it no matter what? No. You change it up, you lose. Even if you do gather a lot of the Western market, you're gonna lose a lot of your Japanese market. And what you fail to realize that you have about as much of the Western market as you're gonna get. Let's look at the sales number for Devil May Cry 4. 2.7 million copies across all platforms. That's some good numbers. So are you getting that greedy where you talking about, well, now we want 5 million? 5 million copies. We want that many. Capcom, I don't know. That's kind of stupid. I mean, really, if you wanted to boost your sales numbers, you should have went to more traditional means of doing so. Why did Final Fantasy 13 sell so much? Well, they utilized a couple marketing tools. They said, okay, they took it off the exclusivity on PlayStation 3. Said, oh, it's on Xbox now. Not only is it on Xbox now, we're bundling it. So that's called a play-on exclusivity. So a lot of the Xbox 360 owners were like, "Oh snap, we're getting let into the club. Let's get on it." A lot of advertising it had a positive review or a positive preview. People are like, "Oh, this looks good." So you got already building the hype behind it. So the game, when it came out, it sold well. And then their mistake was they tried to cater the gameplay to Westerners, make it more story oriented, driven, and more based on high octane action. More fast critical thinking skills involved. Obviously, once people got their hands on it, the traditional fans didn't like it so much. Catering to Westerners isn't the best thing to do, especially when you're changing the gameplay mechanics and you're changing character design, especially in this reboot, Ultimate DmC. Basically, they were able to see right off the bat the negative response they're going to get to this. I don't know what the marketing, what was it, a case of them being too far into the production cycle by the time that initial "My Name is Dante" trailer dropped? That might be the case. I imagine the only reason they didn't scrap it is because they were already so far into the production cycle that they're like, all right, we just got to try to recoup some of our losses on this. But I think they knew that this game wasn't going to go over that well after putting that out. I don't know why they felt like they would reinvent something, a hack and slash game, to try to bring in more of the Western market. Obviously, the Western market does not consist of the majority of people who play hack and slash games. So that wasn't a good move to do. You should have stuck to your guns. They should have stuck to their guns, utilized some marketing tools, advertised more, did the same live streams they're doing now with IGN. Then you boost your sales numbers that way. You might have pushed, if you could have done that, you would have pushed your sales probably above that 3 million mark, maybe. You probably would have outsold DmC 4, which sold well in retrospect. There was a lot of places they could have gone with the original universe. They could have even, there's a lot of people out there screaming they wanted to see an epilogue, or not epilogue, but a prequel to the prequel. They wanted to see what exactly did Sparta do. What odds did he face to close the Hellmouth? How did he seal Mundus for the first time? These are good plot premises. We know a couple of things about the backstory of the original series. We know that Yamato and Rebellion were originally Sparta swords. His weapons, he gave them to his sons. Obviously the Sparta sword itself was his. That's an interesting backdrop. That's an interesting backstory. They didn't have to go reinvent the series to cater to Westerners. It was already gonna it already had captured about as much of the Western market as it was going to. That's what they failed to realize. They didn't even have to do that. There's plenty of places to go. Dante is a demon hunter by trade. Send him on a job. Make a game about some job. Obviously that might not work, so it has to be a pretty interesting job, because they tried that with Devil May Cry 2 and it didn't work out. So we'll send them on some random job and it'll work out. So maybe the prequel idea would have been the way to go. They already did the anime, that they did a lot of things with that, so there was still material there. That's the point. This reinvention to try to cater to the Western markets was not a smart idea. I think they'll find that out, though. They'll find that out soon. I think these sale numbers aren't going to reach even the 2 million they projected over the lifespan of the game. And they'll come to realize what a mistake failure in logic they had. But ultimately, I don't feel like if people were hoping that they would continue the series if this failed, I think Capcom's more likely to scrap the game altogether, or scrap the premise altogether. I think they'll let Devil May Cry die after this, because it is all about sales. So you don't have to support this game. I'm not gonna. This review is not to try to influence people to go out and buy it. Just realize that it's about making money. At the end of the day, that's why they did it. They thought in some misguided chain of logic that doing this would capture them more market. Obviously, they're going to find out a lot differently. But I want to be known that the game itself is not a bad game. It's a good game. I enjoyed it. I'll probably play it on higher difficulty levels. But still, it is indeed not the original. The originals, like I said, the originals had a different degree of storytelling, which endeared me to them. Especially, and not so much in Devil May Cry 1 or 2, but in 3 and 4, what I really liked about that storytelling is that they said, here's a general premise, go, and it really worked out well for DmC 3, but what really got me was the over-the-top action sequences, the fights, the scenes, and the cutscenes that just sort of had you eye-widening, eye-opening fight scenes that were over the top and crazy. I hadn't seen much anything like that. This reboot has not one cutscene where Dante is showcasing his combat ability. He's either dodging something or he's talking. That's it. And I prefer that over-the-top action. It's a hack and slash game, and it's supposed to have an over-the-top character. I liked, DmC 3 and 4's over-the-top action sequences. That made the games great to me. Obviously, DmC 1 didn't have as much of that going on, but they did have a few cutscenes where there was some fight scenes going on, especially with Nello Angelo involved. So that's just, I guess that's the difference between, Western and Eastern storytelling, especially in this series at least, is that they're focused on more of the action, very simple, straightforward premises. Where this is, they detail the plot and they insinuate it, they accent it, they try to build up on the plot and draw the player in to the story, which they succeeded in my case. I like the message. It's basically a social commentary. They talk or basically take a jab at the news and media, how it brainwashes people. How the food and drink we take into our bodies weakens us and causes a lot of other problems, and how there are forces behind the powers that be pulling the puppet strings, if you will. So it was a good social commentary, good jab. The environments were unique. They folded in on themselves, and there were seamless transitions. It reacted to the player's position in the environments. They really did a neat thing with this reboot, but I don't want to see any more. I want the original series back. Still, with that said, so my final version is good job, Ninja Theory and Capcom, with this one. Now bring back the original series. This has been Kaous Games. Until next time, gamers, game on.